Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. It's House Energy and Digital Infrastructure, and we are here on Wednesday, February 18th. And we basically have until lunch for our committee discussion on first H716, an act relating to net metering, and then next H753, an act relating to utility service disconnections and ratepayer protections. So the point of today's conversation is to get a really clear sense of the committee from each committee member about how they're feeling about these bills, what we think the next steps are, so that we can manage our time between now and crossover. Why don't we start with 716? I'm just going to pull it up. We've taken a pretty significant amount of testimony on both of these bills, but H716 remains as introduced. So if folks want to, be referring to testimony or be referring to the bill, I'm going to be looking at the bill as we go through and trying to take some notes from my folder. So, okay. So this is Rep. Morrow's bill. And as I mentioned, it has not been introduced. I mean, it hasn't been amended since it was introduced. So, and it's also a short bill. Basically, as we know from our walkthrough and from the testimony, it would basically eliminate the negative adjuster on behind the meter consumption. And Rep. Morrow, can you explain to me what else the bill would do? I'm going to turn this over to you for a minute.
Yeah, it's just a two-element bill to freeze the negative rate adjuster at -4 cents and to eliminate it on behind the meter consumption.
Okay. And why don't you give us your, we talked when you introduced the bill, but why don't you give us a little bit of a overview about where you're thinking the testimony has gone, what you think next steps might be. And sorry, I didn't ask you ahead of time or give you any heads up.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd like to hear from the committee. I have my opinions.
Okay, great.
But I'd like to hear from the committee first, and then I'll say my opinions.
Sounds great. Yep, and I'll go last too. So open discussion, now's the time, and it's really important that we hear from everybody. Yep, Rep. Cam.
Yes, need buzzers. So I am really interested in supporting the renewable energy and the solar industry in the state. I am concerned about this being the way to do that. It feels to me like we need a really big look at how the whole thing looks, which is a big undertaking. I feel like we have time for that right now. So, yeah, that's my concern. It seems like it's a simple solution to a complex problem, and I'm worried about making it worse.
How would it make it worse?
Well, just
It's sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just really trying to make sure I understand where everybody's at.
Well, I guess I don't really know what. I feel like there are unintended consequences, and foreseeable consequences. So I don't know how exactly it would make it worse, except that it is. It sort of exacerbates the problem of I think the perception of cost shifting and some real cost shifting, but a perception that probably is bigger than the actual at the moment, and perhaps create more of a backlash. That's sort of in terms of public opinion. So yeah, I don't really know.
Okay,
I wouldn't say it makes it worse, but it just seemed like I said, simple solution to a complex problem.
so would you, are there any changes to the bill as introduced that you would suggest or consider? Or are you just feeling like this isn't not the right solution at the right time and you want a broader look? Sorry, I'm really putting people on the spot,
Yeah.
but we're in a crossroads here.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm more sympathetic to the idea of taking the behind the meter solar out of the equation, but then it gets into battery storage and the use of battery storage, and whether a homeowner or I guess it would have to be a homeowner can have access to the power that's in the battery to even out their usage, which that's part of the whole big thing that is bigger than what's in the bill, and is also would require changing at least GMP's battery program, because the way their battery program works, basically the power that's in the battery is for their usage only unless there's an outage, and then the customer can have access to it. So, like I said, it's a bigger balancing issue.
Okay,
That's what it feels like to me.
alrighty. Who's next? Sibilia.
I'm a hard no. I think that we stopped having the legislature set these rates and moved it to the PUC for a reason. I think it is a bad move to go back. Having said that, I am really upset about what we are seeing federally. I am sympathetic to the issue of the solar industry and do not want to see it falter. I would love to see alternative types of incentives. I think those would be appropriate. This program, I think, has gone as far along as it makes sense. When we have something that is emergent and nascent, and now it has really gotten to a place where it's impacting others, who we also want to electrify. And so things like refundable tax credits, looking at potentially general fund obligations, looking at some, language with our town energy committees, or other types of incentives. I'm done here in terms of the solar industry. I'm very interested in helping them in other ways and thinking about other ways and I think it's important that we do. But I'm done with net metering. We intentionally removed, as part of the RES, group net metering. And I think we have not sufficiently replaced, thinking about renewables for housing and other, we haven't solved the loss there yet. And I think we need to, with some intention. Hopefully, are we completely dead on solar for all, or do we have a chance in court? I'm asking Director Poor, if I may.
Yeah, for the record,
TJ Poor, Director Regulated Utility Planning, Public Service Department. That's a hard question to answer. It's in the courts, and it's going to be a while in the courts. Yeah. And so we don't know.
Yeah, I do think, we need more power. We need more clean and renewable power. I think it is imperative that we figure out how to keep this industry alive with, what we are seeing federally, and to help Vermonters switch off of fossil fuels as quickly as possible, which is going to take a long time. So while I am a hard no on expanding net metering or returning that argument to the legislature, I am a hard yes and willing to jump in on other types of. Thank you.
Who's next?
I think, I was just gonna say, we can go around the table, then we're not fighting each other. Since you guys started. Yeah, this one's complicated, huh? And, I love rooftop solar. And I think the point that Scott makes about unintended consequences is a good one. And for instance, I can imagine a utility paying this, getting locked into this rate if we freeze it, and then having that as an obligation and not having the money to put towards some more effective program that comes along later. For me, the piece about not charging people for electricity they generate on their roof and use in their home that never hits the grid, that feels pretty clear to me. So
Clear as in,
here's when we should do that. Yeah, to me, that feels, and I know there are some, feels like secondary consequences to that, but I just keep thinking about how irritated I'd be if someone charged me for eating a tomato I grew in my garden. That would irritate me. So there's that. On net metering, I also sort of generally philosophically, from an economist's point of view, rent freezes mess stuff up, and price freezes mess stuff up, and wage freezes mess stuff up. Like it's a long history of taking that flexibility out of the market, messing things up. So it worries me a little bit on that level. And it also feels like, I don't know if freezing it -4 cents is the right level or not. And I also don't know, the basis we use for that adjuster is the retail price, which it's not the price utilities pay for electricity they get elsewhere. So I don't even know if we're using the right base. Or should it be wholesale +10 instead of retail -4? So all that's a long way of saying that I feel like I don't know enough to have a very clear opinion on that part of the
okay.
Oh, then I just go.
Oh, I guess we're going around. Sorry. Yes.
So I share similar sentiments. Very concerned about our local companies, our workforce being impacted right now, and want to be able to help. But I also have had my concerns about where net metering is in the life cycle, in this very dynamic space, and really eager for, the compensation conversation and study, which I know our PUC is equipped to do. So, I also was really paying attention to the numbers that were shared with us from our co-ops, and seeing what their perception of cost shift looked like, what it amounted to. And, and understanding that we're not all in agreement about how benefits are quantified. So, and we just, as a group, we're talking about it all the time, about cost shift in different forms, and making decisions of, okay, it's okay to subsidize this group now, but not okay right now to do it this way. And I mean, it's frustrating. It's a frustrating space. And for me, the rate design piece of it, I know is very powerful and important, but also not something I have any depth in. And I do feel more comfortable having those decisions handled by the PUC. But I also heard that we can give a new directive that they're operating off of two things: the least cost and what the other one.
Reliability. In-state challenge.
In-state. And maybe that's not enough. Like, do we need to to give them more to work with. So we accomplish the policy goals that we have. Like, are we hamstringing ourselves? So I'm grateful for this bill for opening up my thinking. And also, like Rep. Sibilia, really want to see some other form of incentive come into play. And soon.
Okay,
Well, I certainly am in favor of the, not having to pay to grow, slice and eat your own tomatoes. And that's kind of funny because I use the tomato analogy in thinking about this. I think that
Do you have to slice it or can you just eat it?
you could eat the whole thing as long as you've got to cut out the stem first if you do. Okay, so we're gonna do some preparation. But when it comes to the time of day or time of use, it's there for people who have advanced metering, and some of the other utilities or the other utilities are going to advance this. So with advanced metering, they know by the hour or by the 15-minute increment, whatever they do their reading, is when you use it. The negative 4 cents that you consume in the system is set up now, you could charge your battery. You pay 4 cents when it goes through your generation meter. You pay 4 cents on everything there. You then may charge your own battery for that and not export it to the grid. But then when the grid takes it back in times that they need your energy, then you're paying for it again when you put it back into the battery from your generation. So there's a double billing in there of 8 cents for those. And it's only a 10 kW battery. I think that what the Public Service Department wrote with their testimony in this is the real value of the energy that's being exported at the time it's being exported. So rather than the minimal wholesale or average wholesale, I look at an incremented cost because the standard offer programs, it's only 127.5 megawatts in the standard offer. Some of those are getting 30 cents a kilowatt hour. So why can't the rate rather be set the average? The utility can take either the average residential rate or their residential rate. So if you're Green Mountain Power sells at 21.475 residential rate, but the reimbursement rate is 18. Other places in the other utilities might have a lower rate that they can compensate at. But I would look at maybe the compensation rate be the average cost of all their generation in either statewide or in the utility. We heard from WEC, they don't have to, WEC is exempt from standard offer because they're 100% renewable. But we also heard from the utilities that net generation is a cost to other members who don't participate. So maybe it's do away with the net is by the billing period. So it's how you net it out in the billing period, call it 30 days, but maybe more of a time of generation, time of use. So as the bill sits now, I would, if it's not revised, I would vote no.
okay. Okay, sorry, I'm just making sure I know.
You're saying time of generation at the blended rate without adjusters? Is that what you said?
With the blended rate, the adjuster reduces the rate that they're getting instead of getting the
No,
8.
no, I know that works. I'm trying to clarify what you're suggesting.
So if they're buying so much at 6 and so much at 8, but they're buying 100 and whatever they're buying, summation of everything, they may raise it, 10, 11 cents, 12 cents, 13. But this to lock somebody in with a sealed rate of 4 cents is contrary to what they expressed in the real value of the electricity is not determined by selecting a set figure.
I was just trying to understand your suggestion more clearly. You were saying just take the statewide blended rate and
Statewide blended cost of generation, not the
not the
not the blended residential rate. And I'm not even sure how they calculate the blended rate. It has a 2-year, every 2 years they determine the rate. So what we have in net generations is we have you're a net generator by the year you got your CPG.
okay, no. And that was clarified, thank you.
What's that?
Yep.
I've done a lot of thinking on this. I've talked with members of the committee about it. I honestly cannot understand. I understand why, but behind the meter consumption adjusters ludicrous to me at best. I don't believe that should even exist. If someone is generating their own power, they should not having to be paying for what they're generating and using. That just doesn't make sense at all. With that said, there's a report from 2023 from the PUC on net metering. And I've read through that 3 or 4 different times. And at the very end of it, there's a lot of information that suggests different ways of charging for net metering, if you even call it net metering. I believe net metering is at its end of its cycle with it, the way it is currently, and it needs to be looked at and redone. Whether that process includes directing the PUC to investigate and come up with something, maybe that's the start. But I do believe that we have to do something different. I don't own solar. A lot of people on the committee do. I can't afford to do it. That's just because I can't afford to. But I understand why people put it up. And I understand the comfort of creating your own energy and being able to use your own energy. But to pay for it, again, it's just nuts. The end result is I think that we have to redo net metering. We have to look at it and start fresh, because what it was like when it started isn't what we're living in now. I guess that's where I'll end it. I mean, I've read enough to have ideas, but the ideas are so scattered that I think I'll just keep that quiet. But I do believe that time of use, charging versus, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Because we did all see that, when the panels are producing may not be when they're using it. So we have to look at how we can make that equitable across the board. Well, I will be a no on the bill at this point.
Okay. So, so me, well, I would probably vote yes, on the bill as introduced. Understand that I'm outnumbered. What I'm looking for is a solution that feels more immediate, I guess, because it's, and I know I've mentioned this a lot of time in our committee discussions, but it's not going to surprise anybody on the committee that, I am a big fan of solar generation. I think it's a really important part of our energy future. And I think that we should be, as a legislature, I think we should be incentivizing it and supporting it. And I'm watching, sort of the battles over siting, and even our community, even our own committee conversations about single plant language. And so just to reiterate something I've said a lot of times in the past couple of weeks, to be disincentivizing rooftop solar, which is utterly non-controversial, right? Like my neighbors are not going to care if I put, a solar array on my garage, which is exactly, what I did a long time ago. And so it is to me, the easiest, simplest, least lowest barrier solution. And I feel like we should be doing everything in our power to make it easier for folks to do it. And instead, we're fighting, intense federal headwinds with the loss of the tax credit. We are fighting regulatory headwinds here with the constant, downward adjustment of the rates. So we're just making it harder and harder and harder to pick the lowest hanging fruit. And that's really frustrating to me. So I guess I'll turn it over to Rep Morrow. Then we need to decide about paths, right? So, okay.
Thank you all for your input. Appreciate it. Obviously the genesis of this was the disappearance of the solar and the federal tax credit. So I've, trying, this was an interim step to try to address multiple issues. One is the loss of the hard-won jobs in Vermont. We have a lot of good paying, stable solar jobs, which are about to disappear. In testimony, someone mentioned the California net metering 3.0, and I started looking at that. California lost 19,000 jobs in the first year after that went into effect in solar installation business. They knew they were going to use it, but that was a policy choice, and that might be inevitable. I really hope it's not, because I think solar is an important part of our future. It's really it's one of the cheapest, most stable forms of power. In our statute, we have conflicting priorities. We have this least cost mandate, but we also have a lot of language around in-state generation. And how those two are balanced is a real question in my mind, because I think there's a conflict there with both the department and the PUC, and how those are valued relative to each other. I think there's general agreement that we need to further the beneficial electrification in Vermont to reduce price volatility for Vermonters, among other things. And so there's a tension there between this cost shift and rates potentially going up a little bit versus keeping rates low and further enabling beneficial electrification. So that's something that's just kind of inherent in how we have things structured now. Another element of this for me is that I'd much rather see solar going on top of existing buildings than in our ag fields and in our forests. We're losing a significant amount of agricultural land in Vermont every year. And solar in fields does have its place, but as you can see just from the last few weeks, it does promote conflict in our communities, and it can be controversial and maybe not the highest and best use of that land. So ways to promote putting solar on buildings is, instead of in ag and forest land, is an important consideration. Another element of this is, like right now, given the loss of the credits and the negative rate adjusters, solar is really basically only for rich people. And so the benefits of the resilience that you get from producing your own power and more producing and storing your power shouldn't be just the domain of rich people. And that's where we're at now. If you just look at how the numbers pencil out, that's the fact of the matter. So that's another element of this, just kind of rambling, but these are the elements that I'm considering when I think about this. The cost shift is a real issue. I think it's, in my opinion, kind of overstated in the sense that some of the non-quantifiable benefits of rooftop distributed net metered solar are not taken into account. But I don't deny that the cost shift is real and is a valid topic of conversation and deserves scrutiny in how we move forward. Especially in relation to this beneficial electrification, which should be for everyone, not just for people who can afford it. And then like the last element that came up multiple times, which is not in the bill, which is this aspect of tying distributed generation to storage. And that I think is a crucial part of future. It improves the resilience value for the homeowner, but it also, as we've seen very directly with GMP creating the virtual power plants, it's valuable for peak shaving. It's valuable for load management on the grid. It minimizes distribution and transmission costs, and there's all sorts of benefits to having that arrangement on our grid. So it's not a simple topic. I am in favor of looking at net metering in a more holistic manner, a more comprehensive way. This bill was a way to address affordability and distributed solar on a short-term basis. We can do both. As you know, the PUC is going to be evaluating this this summer. So when I say this, I mean the rate adjusters. It's potential that we'll be in a negative 6-cent adjuster environment in a few months. But maybe not. I just wanted to share with the committee the 5 criteria that the PUC needs to consider in determining adjusters. The number and capacity of net metering systems receiving CPGs in the most recent 2 years. So that's not going to be great data because the tax credit just went away a few months ago. The extent to which the current siting adjusters are affecting siting decisions, which seems pretty subjective. Whether changes to the qualifying criteria of the categories are necessary. I'm not even sure what that really means.
Say that again. Sorry.
Whether changes to the qualifying criteria of the categories are necessary. By the way, this is in PUC Rule 5.100. The overall pace of net metering deployment, which is kind of the same as number 1, and any other information deemed appropriate by the commission. That's the criteria they're going to use to decide. So I would think at the very least we would like to have our opinions conveyed to the PUC on the negative rate adjuster issue. I do have some draft language on incorporating battery backup adjusters into this bill, but we could modify it to take out the net metering. It seems like there's broad consensus around behind the meter solar in the committee. And probably the battery connection. So we could modify the bill to take out the net metering adjuster at this point, isolate it to behind the meter. Or we could just do further work on this.
All right. Okay, so that's good because you went to exactly where I was going. So what are we going to do? That's the question. Okay, so there is, in committee, we always have the option of doing nothing. Which means that we took a bunch of testimony, we don't bring the bill to a vote. And we have surfaced an issue, we've raised a lot of awareness, and we would probably have some committee members who would be wanting to work on this over the summer and fall, and bring a more comprehensive bill next January if they're here. So there's that. We do that a lot here in the legislature. As we were going around the table, I had a similar thought to Rep. Morrow of wondering whether we have the support of the votes to strip out the freeze on the adjuster and move forward with the behind the meter provision. So thoughts on that?
I have a question about that. Would that only be beneficial to the homeowner on the summer days when they're generating a bunch of power? I guess I wonder what the impact of that. Absent battery storage.
Well, right now, I think the way it's calculated, it would be netted over the month. You'd need to do some of this more time of use things that a few members brought up, which I think that's a whole nother issue that we should look at, because I think time of use billing would make a lot more sense. Yeah, that's another separate issue.
As part of the bigger issue of how do we charge for electricity? How do we credit for on-site generation? It's the big issue.
Yeah, but I mean, you heard the department say they're in favor of that. If you could do it at time of use, and then the exported energy would be credited at some blended rate with an adjuster, but at some at the cost value of that kilowatt.
The avoided cost or something, having to buy that kilowatt off the market. Well, anyway, I guess the main question I have is how much value, if we just did that, if we just said, you can have your own tomato, you don't have to pay for it. What's the actual value of that? And I don't know that. I don't know if any kind of this. We haven't had testimony about that.
Yeah, that would need more of a recognition.
Okay. Okay, so one thing I'm clearly hearing before we do another go around to the table is that if we did that, and then I want to hear from everybody, we would need time and testimony. It's not like it's, oh yeah, I would need to learn a lot more about it as well, but anyway.
Yeah,
It's not like okay, we'll vote on that this afternoon.
I am firmly there. Something
Firmly there, interested in this part, or firmly there, we
would need
need
a
more
lot more
testimony.
testimony
Okay.
to be convinced, but could get behind pretty quickly asking PUC to look at this.
We have delivered to PUC a pretty hefty
I know
homework
they're
assignment
looking,
already,
I
but
think they're looking for more work from us.
I think they are
especially if it
too.
comes uncompensated.
in fact, I thought I heard Mr. Faber say that. Did you say that? We don't have, I think he
Something
said,
like that.
we don't have anything to do. So be careful what you say on YouTube. Anybody else on the? So we can take a look at our time and see Yeah, we can try to get some more folks in to talk about just that bit. Yeah.
So just as, solar developed over the years, the incentives were there to get homeowners to put in,
Yes.
uh, uh, solar generation. That's why I own it. That's why many people bought it. The market is saturated. There are too many Hondas in the used car market per se, meaning that, that we don't need, uh, they, the utility or the generation isn't necessarily needed for that type of time of generation when it generates. So that, uh, maybe the incentive needs to push towards development of battery storage, whether it be battery storage for the person that just wants the convenience of outage support, or if they want to pair it with solar. But maybe the two could be separated so that some of this incentive that was in the past could now be directed to the battery storage.
Right, Chapman? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would add to that the other advantage of batteries, even for people without any solar, if we have meaningful time of use billing, then people can draw power in at low cost and then power their house with it instead of high cost, the high cost time of day. So there are, and that helps shape the peak, and it has all the other benefits to the grid. So I like batteries and I like time of use charge.
Well, except the battery management system, controls may be, excessive, but I know.
Yeah, although my experience is that the batteries are smart enough to handle time of use, but not super smart, but they have a little bit of intelligence on board.
So I do have some draft language very short about batteries. So
Okay.
I could rework the bill to take out the net metering, leave behind the meter and add batteries. And we could
Well,
consider whether.
do it.
time
Yeah. So let's
testimony on that or not.
let's get an updated draft. There's clearly, there's clearly limited support for freezing the adjuster. So, but let's take that out, put your thing in, bring an amended bill. And then, like I said, this has now become just a time management thing with crossover. And today is committee bill discussion day, right? So we're going to have this kind of talk on all of our bills, and then it'd be like, okay, what? And this is a vital conversation for me, so I know where we're all at with the time we have left.
I mean, when we're developing, solar generation, there's also some right sizing to it. Meaning that you've got inverter that has a certain capacity. And so do you take it for optimization? If you have a 5 kW inverter, you put up 5 kW of panel. And then when you have that excess that you don't need, the concept of group net metering comes in. That, and again, the rate at which it's compensated needs to be adjusted. But I really think that group net metering was a mistake to do away with. And we turn around and say solar for all. Well, what's solar for all? Isn't that solar for all is another variation of group net metering? But because we put it under this label, we're going to permit it. We put it under a different label, and we don't.
Yeah, Rip Sethford?
So, and like I stated, I think the whole thing needs to be looked at. We need to redo it. Everything we're talking about is, in my opinion, a Band-Aid. Band-Aids come off after a time and everything unravels. I truly believe that we need to have a start to look at it, come up with something good with all stakeholders involved, and then move forward from there. And where we're at now is the junction of where we have to start. I don't think Band-Aid after Band-Aid is gonna work. I think we need to really look at it and we need to come up with something that, like I said, is fair and equitable. There are gonna be people that like it, people that don't like it. That's the nature of what we do. But I think that we could, with everyone, come up with something that is more beneficial for the whole industry and for ratepayers, Stacy.
All right, thanks, everybody. That was super helpful. Next, is H 753. And, that is largely rectories. So similarly, we are looking at as introduced. And again, a bill that we've taken a lot of testimony on. I've got a hard copy here this time. So, and we've come to the critical crossroads. So, Rectory, why don't you, do you want to
I
kind of
do.
give a little where we're at?
Yeah,
Pitch?
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I really have appreciated the wide range of testimony we've taken, and some of it was serendipitous, like the people that happen to be in the house, bringing some very personal stories to our attention. And I just, this bill came out of Act 142, this larger sense of what energy assistance looks like in the state, how it needs to be better coordinated. And I know there are efforts that are going to be ongoing for that at the Department of Public Service. But so just taking in some of the input so far and how that's changed my sense about this bill and what I would like to see come of it, and then to hear from you as well. It'd be really great. So one of the first pieces is, this is all about changing Rule 3.300. I understand that we have very detailed rules compared to other states. I appreciate that. And this section, one of the bill would look at this issue of the medical certificate. So we kind of took some testimony on that from different people. We heard from Greg Faber on Friday. I'm not actually that comfortable anymore with this language that's as introduced. And, the other thing that has come up is the water utilities not really being applicable. That language would need to be changed. And then the other piece is the heat. So currently there's nothing about hot weather disconnections in the rule, but we have found out from listening to our utilities that there is in practice a mechanism between the department and the utilities about high heat days and the need to not disconnect people. So my goal would be to not just live with the norm, but actually see the rule updated. I've also learned that it takes 2 years to do a rulemaking. I have learned from Carol Flint that there are things in the rule that she would like to update and that there's an intention to update the rule. So I'm wondering if maybe instead of the PUC shall amend, we can put some ideas in for when the rulemaking happens, address the heat and revisit the medical certificate. That would give the time to have the experts weigh in, the medical folks, the language may be similar to that, but maybe it could be finessed a little more for Vermont in that rulemaking process. So that's something I would like to amend this language to do rather than the automatic directive to have a rulemaking. The other part that was
Sorry, can I stop you
Sure.
before you go
Yeah.
on? So about the rulemaking.
Yep.
Somebody who knows this better than I do needs to remind me of what that language looks like. So, sorry, did you say that the PUC is already updating the rule?
well,
Or did you say that we would say, shall update Rule 3300 to consider whether. blah
Well,
and blah.
instead of saying shall amend the rule, it would say something more like, at the next Rule 3.3800, update. We would like to see.
Does that
these things.
happen at like a date certain?
And I think having a date certain, because it always is good. So we would need to discuss that. And that's something we might want to get some testimony on. And we
Okay,
would need help from Ellen in crafting that language. We would take out what are utility references as well. And then the other piece was, the idea of having a performance metric around disconnections, which we learned only one other state currently has. And they have a year in with it. It's working well. So given the novelty, given the reaction from the PUC, which they did not really understand the language in the bill as it's written, and given the input from the utilities saying, we would welcome having language and goals around disconnection best practices, but we think the right place for that is the IRP, the integrated resource plan that all utilities do every 3 years on a staggered basis. So I would like to spend some time, because we have, a lot of investment in best practices has happened in our state. The Department of Public Service has been looking at this over the years. We have, an evaluation of the biggest one in the state, Green Mountain Powers, with what's currently in place, what best practices are, and some suggestions. As a result of that, some of the suggestions have been taken up. So that's good. And there's more that could be done. And I think that this could give us a good place to start in terms of some language around disconnection goals and best practices in the IRP. So I would be willing to spend some time on that. I don't know how long that would take with the timeline that we have, but I think that would be a good first step. And yeah, and that's kind of where I am. I don't know how others feel. I do think that the totality of risk right now around rate pressures is real. We've been hearing it on all sorts of levels. And so I think it's really important to think about what happens to the most vulnerable electricity customer, especially when we have goals around electrification and a bigger portion of your household spending will be going towards your electric bill. So I think it's important for us to have, some progress on this front. And I think that from what I've heard, these steps could be helpful. I don't know how others, what we've been hearing and thinking on this.
we're about to find out. Let's go around.
Well, I think 3.300 ought just remain the way it was revised in 2024. The prior date for that was 2006, I believe, was what we referred to. So every 18 years. But we heard from some of the witnesses that the utilities remain revenue neutral. So what doesn't get paid by people who use it get paid by others. And I personally have been involved in my career in recording shutoffs when they were not able to shut people off manually, where the meter actually had to be pulled and isolated. And what I worry about is, even with the current system, if people get behind in the wintertime and they can't be disconnected till March, they have a very high bill to catch up on, and to allow them to continue for whatever reason. Medical is one thing for 30 days, but not medical for 90 days, because if you go another 90 days, that careers make double. and they will never catch up. And Green Mountain Power has a assistance plan that's available to people who are signed up automatically if they participate in some plans, some public assistance. They said LIHEAP or whatever. But what about those people who don't participate and are paying the full retail? I just am concerned about getting too far behind, use up their two lifetime write-offs. And I think the utilities do well at managing their shut-offs accordingly. And if with any assistance program, there's always going to be the people who know the rules better and take advantage of stretching them to their advantage. Like they know they can get a doctor's excuse. I can't even get into my doctor in 30 days, so I don't know how many people, whether it's just a phone call and somebody writes a letter. But I think the utilities do well at managing their current ability to recover the revenue they're doing.
Okay, so just making sure I heard you correctly. So if we strip the bill back to ask the PUC to amend Rule 3.300 to consider medical notes and hot weather disconnects, you would still not support it?
If it was only a recommendation to review 3.300, yes, but if it was a requirement, no.
Okay. Who's next?
Yes, I. Testimony, I believe that the utilities do not want to disconnect somebody. I believe that. I don't think anybody wants to take power away from someone. The flip side to that is they do a disconnect, other people are gonna have to pay for that. That I have a problem with. So as the bill is written, I can't support it. If we roll it back to the PUC amending the rule, putting in what's already in practice from what we've heard, I don't have a problem with that. I would support that, but I can't support any other piece of the bill.
Okay.
I thought Representative Torres' evaluation was aligned with mine. I thought the testimony by a number of the utilities that disconnects actually haven't gone up over the last decade or so was compelling. I was under the impression that disconnects were going up actually quite dramatically as electric rates went up. And we were coming out of COVID and all that sort of thing. And that doesn't appear to be the case. And I do agree that the utilities work quite, especially the smaller ones, work quite well with their customers to keep them powered up. It's to everyone's benefit to avoid disconnections. So I was appreciative of a lot of that testimony.
Yeah.
And thought that was good for us as a committee to understand that. I think the heating issue is going to become more and more of an issue as we go forward, and that hasn't really been incorporated in the past consideration so much. So I would like to see that addressed in the rules going forward. Heating degree days.
Talking about high heat situations.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it when there's been heat waves in other parts of the country or in the world. You know, the wet bulb temperature goes over a certain number and people start dying pretty quickly. So that is a legitimate concern that we need to address going forward.
Okay.
Just thinking about that, I remember when I was in the weatherization in Burlington, there was one summer when there was a high heat situation, and people were dying, and all of a sudden, I think it's in August, all of a sudden, Department of Energy came out with a plan to incentivize, allow weatherization agencies to put in air conditioning in people's houses. I think Chicago saw a lot of people die in the late 90s. So I guess my impression overall is that what a disconnect. For all the reasons it's an expense for them, it's a hassle, and they're also, just on a human level, they don't want to do that if they can avoid it. So I guess I would come down. I guess I would not support the bill as it is. I would come down and on the side of a recommendation for some items to be addressed in the next 300. And I was looking for the previous update. I didn't realize it was 2006 until Rep. Howard mentioned that. So maybe we should need to give them a date service at some point to do another update of it and pick considerations of extreme heat and any other matters that seem appropriate to be part of the update process and being the medical provider issue. All right.
Okay. Rep. Sibilia?
I support updating the rule. I'm sensitive to the time that it has been updated to 2024. I would not support passing something with a recommendation. I would suggest maybe we put, I don't know, if we were just going to recommend, that they look at these things. And if we wanted to actually pass something that said you shall with the rule, I mean, maybe putting something date certain, I would suggest giving them some time. I don't know what a letter might do it. It's so the PUC, my sense is they really appreciate it when we give them things to do and tell them things to do. So if we were to send them a suggestion, that might be interesting to see how they handle that.
So let's see here.
So that was a yes.
I heard,
Okay.
I think I got it. So now, okay, now I'm going to try to summarize. Oh, sorry.
Fran.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Go.
I'm interested in a few things that I don't know. One is, it feels like they're off the top of my head, right? 3 categories of people who get disconnected. There are people who just run out of money and can't afford it. There are people who are freeloading. And there are people, well, I guess the first category to be more specific, people who have like a one-time financial emergency in their lives. They have a medical thing, they have a car that falls apart, they have whatever it is. And, they need all their cash for that. And so they go a few months without, they get a disconnection notice. Those feel recoverable. There are people who are just living in a house they can't afford, the mortgage and the bills and everything else. And then there are probably some just freeloaders who could totally afford it, don't feel like paying the bill because they know it'll be. And the people in I'd also be interested in knowing what happens to people when they get disconnected. How many of those people end up moving out? How many of those are rentals? How many people lose their homes because they can't pay the utility bills? All these things. What happens to them afterwards? This is all slightly larger questions than we're addressing here. It's a bigger scope. But it, and I asked that specifically because, if someone's just freeloading, then pull the plug. I don't care if it's hot, right? Like if they can pay their bills and just choose not to. That's their choice. If they can't afford it and it's hot, one would like to protect people from dying from heat injuries. But I also wonder about, the way it's structured now, there's a whole cold season when you don't disconnect people. With the hot, we're talking about a day at a time, heat emergency is declared and so forth. Seems difficult to administer. On the other hand, if you have a whole hot season, you can't, and a whole cold season, then as Rep. Hallam said, you're disconnecting everyone in 1 week in the spring and 1 week in the fall. That's not going to be a disaster. Relative to 3.100.
0.
I think I would land on the side of asking the PUC to look into revising it. And to your point, maybe that doesn't need to go.
Can committees do a memorandum?
Yes, so, yeah, we can.
That's a wrap.
Okay. So,
Actually, one other thing is I was concerned about, I mean, that was the speed at which a disconnect can happen. As we heard from GMP, it was pretty quick. So a bill is issued and 27 days later it's due. And 5 days after that, they can people get a disconnect notice, and 15 days after that, they're disconnected. That seemed pretty quick. And that, the rule isn't all abundantly clear about exactly what the time span has to be. So that would be a good thing to.
Doesn't the rule set days?
It doesn't set days per se. It says in 40 days or something or other. It's I'd have to look at it again, but it's not as clear as one would like about what the requirements are.
But it also has a minimum amount of, you have to be up to $100 now before they'll even commence to shut you off. And I got a notice in December. Because my credit card got scalped. So I was in non-payment. And so I called them to alert them that I was awaiting a new credit card to pay them. And they said, well, which used to be 50, no, it's 100 now. So it may be a couple of months before they're behind. Over 100 or whatever, and I don't know how close, but it was 30 days after billing or 27 days after billing, then 5 days after that, because the 3.300 says they have to be 30 or 31 days after the date the bill was prepared, not the date the meter was read. So, and then they had the 5 days and then another 20 or 40 days. So it is almost
I think it was only 15 days, right?
Well, 15 days after the disconnect notice, which can't be issued until 34 days after the billing date.
All right. Well, anyway.
So yes, it's complicated, but
Anyway, we don't need to go into
Yeah.
detail. The point is, I would ask, as part of the revising 3.300 to look at that.
okay. So, my thoughts, so I've brought this up a lot of times in committee, but in general, and Rep. Sibilia knows this probably better than anybody. Writing a letter accomplishes nothing, in my opinion. So, the legislature has high turnover. It's the end of the biennium. There is no timeline by which the PUC needs to return to the rule. And so I just think it would be very easy, for that letter to drift off into the stratosphere and be forgotten by everybody. So if we care about these issues enough as a committee to do anything about it, then I would propose, I guess, that we strip this bill, way back. Section, I think I heard interest in having and also, I also don't see much teeth or much value in passing a bill that just says the PUC may look at the rule. It's like, that's same as writing a letter. So I guess I would ask if we care about this, these remaining pieces, my thought would be that we take a look at something that would probably be a pretty comprehensively revised bill that would, direct the PUC to update Rule 3.300 within some kind of reasonable time frame, not tomorrow, to look at, and then we could go through Rule 3.300 and say, to look at physician certificate, whether heat related, and if we think it's important, the timeline, and give them time to do that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I just want to push back on letters being ineffective. I do not concur. I don't think that they are always effective. I think they are not, you're not able to hold folks accountable to them. But I do have experience, in particular with PUC, with writing letters that were actually quite effective. And I've seen that happen with other committees. There's no way to ensure that what we write will be taken up. So to that point, I would agree. We can't hold folks accountable to letters.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to, the accountability piece. It's like,
Yes.
We adjourn in May and we all go home and, that's that. And you hope that somebody remembers to take that up and, bring them in January and ask where that's at. And so I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just,
I could certainly get on board with an extended timeline.
Yeah,
To do that.
because they did just, they did just do it in 2024. And I'm sorry, I know I asked you this, Victoria, or anybody in the committee, I can't remember. When do rules get updated? Like what, it's not like they have, right? Like, does this?
I think the PUC can update. I think it depends on. But they have pretty broad authority.
But it's not like they sunset, right? Like you update the rule and then it stays there until, I wish Maria were here. It stays there until either we require that the rule be updated or circumstances change enough so that they undertake an update on their own.
Right.
That's the part I'm on. That's where I'm sort of a little bit uncomfortable with the letter idea. It's like, well, if we think this is important, let's, ask them to do it and give them time to do it.
Guess I'd rather do a letter than nothing.
Oh, right. Yes. So in order of,
And I don't know how urgent it is to ask them to do rulemaking.
Right, I don't know either, because as Rep Morrow pointed out, you know, it was definitely a head turner for me to hear, uh, you know, very alarming disconnection stats, you know, at the start of the session. And then hear testimony from all of our utilities and from, other folks that disconnections are, you know, over 10 years going down. That definitely, but I'm worried about the hot weather thing.
So in theory, they're already doing those two things that we're asking them to amend the rule, correct? So they're already doing. It's already in practice between the department and the utilities, so. I mean, I don't wanna quote unquote beat a dead horse. If it's already being done in practice, give them the time to amend the rule when it comes up, I guess. I don't know if forcing them to change the rule now is worth the effort.
I would also note that those who are asking for this right now will not forget if, in fact, we were to send a letter. And they will remind other legislators, you know, hey, they sent them a letter a year ago or 2 years ago and nothing happened, you know, we've got a problem.
Yeah, I know you guys know I have a strong bias on this, that letters and intent and, well, you know, they're already doing this in practice, so why should we do anything? I get super skeptical about that. And you guys have heard me express that opinion in committee before. So it's like, if we want something to happen, we should take steps to ensure that it happens.
I agree. If this is, I don't know how urgent.
But the other question is, transparency and data reporting. So I know that the utilities are all doing monthly updates to PUC on disconnections, but I don't know where that rolls up into some annual report that we see. So I personally want to have like another conversation with someone from the department, because it's also possible that, some of this could get captured in the overall coordination of energy assistance that's going to be going on. And then in that case, it would really be about data and transparency for us. So that's another avenue for reporting.
Okay. Okay, so the two paths I see for this are significantly revised language or a letter. Right? That's the fork we're at for that. Okay, so, okay, so like I said earlier, I think we need to hear about all the bills, and then, you know, that's a today thing, and then figure out, we're gonna have to circle back, right? Okay, so we have next, we have net metering conversation concluded. I took notes. We have 7:53 conversation like paused. And then later today, this is a really helpful day for me. Later today, we have a similar discussion about H718. And then we have more testimony on data centers, 727, with a big talk about that bill scheduled later this week. And then we have FY27 budget also today. And I revised the letter according to our committee discussion yesterday, and I sent it out to everybody. I didn't remember to track changes. I tried to flag the biggest things that had changed. And then we have a bill on the floor today. Yeah. So big day.
Can you round up some capital singers to be backup singers for me? Maybe my thing. I want walk-on music too, by the way.
Certainly. Yeah. Carry it. Alrighty. So I think, is that good? I'm wondering, is there anything else I need to look forward to doing the budget letter. We're having our big talks about all the bills. We've got a bill on the floor. Tomorrow we are not in committee in the morning because we have all the adjutant general and state college trustee stuff. Okay, great. I think we can go offline.